All right, so Dan talked to you a little bit about one thing that we're going to do, which is cold four betting. You should just note that that really is a play that should be used very, very sparingly, like no more than once per session, probably, if that. It's really a play that, you use, like in that last situation, the two people, you couldn't see their stats, but it was a 28-22 open the button, and then the small blind was like a 29-24 that repopped him, and you know he's doing it with a huge range. Um, and if you don't do it very often, the cold four bet should fold. He should be folding like anything that's not ace king, plus, ace king or and jacks plus, and a lot of times jacks will even fold. So just know that if you use it very sparingly, you're going to get them to fold a huge portion of their three betting range. Like I would say about 85%. Here I'm going to show you a hand that I played where it was just someone that was three betting me a ton, and part of this hand comes down to the fact that we're deep stacked, so we're each over 200 big blinds deep. So I'm just gonna, you see, he three bets me. He's been three betting me a ton, and I think he showed down like queen eight suited one of the times, and he did it very recently. So it's not really that relevant that I've ace queen of clubs here. And actually, in a way, you should be a little bit more cautious because, well, I'll show you. I'm gonna go ahead and four bet here. I'm gonna four bet pretty small. It doesn't have to be big. If he does call, because I'm doing it so small, so I four bet to 56, which is not very big at all. Basically, first of all, if he does call, if I actually flop a queen, I'm not going to automatically stack off. I mean, you have to be careful because I expect him to play aces and kings by smooth call. His entire range, I expect him to smooth call here. Maybe he'll like go all in with ace king or something, but this deep, I expect him to smooth call with most of his range. But because I four bet pretty small, I'm representing like a really, really big hand. I'm not that surprised. He goes ahead and calls me in this hand. And I'm actually not that surprised because you see it's a raise of only $34, 56 over 22, and he's got 430 behind. So I expect that he's going to call with, all of his pocket pairs and even some of his suited connector type hands because he's thinking that, if I do have a big hand, that he's going to stack me. That's not a great flop to continue on, but because I raised small, as I said, I expected him to call with a large portion of his range to try to stack me. So I'm going to go ahead and make a c-bet because I think that, all of his pairs that don't have, twos and threes and nines and tens and things like that are probably going to just fold. But also a lot of his range like king queen suited, king jack suited, ace king will probably just call because we're so deep. There's a ton of his range that I expected him to just call because we're doing this deep stacked. This isn't the situation that you're going to find yourself in a ton of the time, but like if you are a little shallower, four betting, in this case it's a four bet bluff because we're so deep. If I four bet with ace queen and he five bets me, I'm definitely folding without much thought. But I thought that he was doing it light enough that I could represent a pretty big hand. I was tired of him doing it this deep because when I actually had ace king myself, or hands like jacks myself, like it was hard to four bet him because it's hard to like go crazy out of position this deep with jacks because I'm not really happy stacking off for 200 big blinds. So it was getting pretty frustrating because I had to play my real hands in a passive way. So I decided to take this hand, which I'm not really sad if he goes all in because it's only ace queen. It's not a huge hand. I decided to take this and turn it into somewhat of a bluff, although it probably is the best hand some of the time. And it's also got some value. If I do hit a queen, there are ways to play it that I can get a lot of value for it. So here I just go ahead and make a c-bet and I take down the pot. But this is just something that, even if you're more shallow, like let's say, it's normal stacks and you open raise to 7 and someone repots it to 24. I might re-raise to like 60, on a bluff and fold to an all-in if they're doing it a lot. A lot of people aren't really doing that, and so people are going to give you a lot of credit. Once again, it's something to use very sparingly, but it's an idea of ways to play back against people. The hands that I wouldn't do it with, especially this deep, you notice once again, just looking at his stack, he had, just get back to his stack here. Once again, you notice that he had he had about $420 in the stack. The hands that I'm not going to do it with there are hands like jacks and queens. Because then, it puts me in a position where I'm setting myself up to really just lose a ton of money if he has a better hand and not make very much money if he doesn't have a better hand. So this is just one move that you can do. It works really well with like a little over 100 big blinds. Like let's say I have 250 in my stack and he's three betting me a lot. If I'm on the cutoff and he's on the button and I raise the cutoff and he re-raises a button, I might go ahead and four bet pretty small as a bluff. Once again, it doesn't have to be big, and expect to take down the pot. It's one way to fight back against people using position against you all the time. But be careful, because if you do it too much, they're just going to shove on you. And of course, we're also going to do it with our real hands, like ace king and, queens and kings and stuff like that.
Okay. Now we're going to get into some situations where we have got ourselves into a 3-bet pot with someone else taking the aggression lead. The vast majority of the time, we're going to have position. It's generally a much better idea to call a 3-bet if you have position, just because of it's a much stronger place to be. Playing 3-bet pots out of position without initiative is really it's not very fun at all. And it's really not going to be that profitable for you either, unless you have very good reads or very good hands. Most of the time, if you're out of position and somebody 3-bets you, unless you've got a very good hand, you're kind of better off either 4-betting or folding, I think. If you try and call and outplay them, it's usually going to be a lot tougher out of position, and against most decent players, they know how to use their position wisely. So most of the hands we're going to show you here are going to be with us in position calling a 3-bet. In this hand we start with, pretty standard open of ace-queen over a limper. And we get a caller, and then the big blind squeezes. Now, we're going to call here because, first of all, the squeezing range is going to be even wider than a cold 3-betting range. There's more money in the pot for him to steal, and because we've got a wide range, and because the caller just calling and usually indicates weakness, obviously he's got pretty much only one guy to go through to win the pot, and that's going to be me. So with ace-queen suited, which is one of the stronger hands in my opening range, I'm going to call here and see the flop. The other caller folds, and here we have a king-high flop. Now, at first glance, this should be one of the scariest flops for my hand because, well, it's got a king in it, and the first thing you want to think about whenever someone re-raises is ace-king. It's just a natural inclination. However, if we consider that his squeezing range here is going to be very wide, there's a lot of hands against which this flop is not so great for him. Any pair under kings, except for, of course, for sets. Any other ace that's not ace-king. Really, there's a lot of hands that he is not going to be too happy about this flop. But because there's the king on top, and he knows that I should be concerned about it most of the time, he's going to bet this 90% of the time. So in this case, I find that given the amount of money that's in the pot, and the fact that I think he's on a wide range, I'm going to shove over the top with ace-queen and hope that he folds. In this case, he does, of course. But this should be worth noting here that I do have very little equity, or maybe even no equity if I get called. But I think that because I'm so confident that most of his range is going to fold, that I can justify doing that. If you had lower fold equity, then you would need to have more outs. But because I feel like my fold equity here is very high, then I'm able to make this play with essentially air. If I do get called here, chances are I have 3 outs or no outs, which means ace-queen is essentially the same here as any smaller hand. But in this case, it works out. Again, use this sparingly, but use it in the right situations, and it'll make you much harder to play against.